Today we're doing a full custom PC build in a custom case. It's kind of made by a smaller company called DIY PC. I'm guessing more and more people have started seeing their stuff pop up here and there. This is a DIY PC branded F1 Diamond F1 case model. This is a low-end tempered glass, small. I'd say it's probably, I guess, stereotypical smallish mid-tower case. The machine itself is going to be a AMD FX 81. Dang, I'm getting everything wrong. It'll be an AMD FX 8350 4 gigahertz 8-core with 16 gigs of RAM on a ASRock 970. So you can see, there we go. ASRock 970 Extreme 3 motherboard. So let's get started here. So I've done several builds in this case now. So I think I have a pretty good idea. I wouldn't call it a nice case, but I also wouldn't call it a bad case either. It's one of those cases that just doesn't really stand out. This is kind of one of those deal of the day type cases. After doing several machines in this case, I don't have any reason to recommend it specifically, but I also don't have any reason to recommend against it either. It's one of those cases that you see, you see so many cases go on sale each week, and if this is the one and you're looking for a low-cost tempered glass option, this will be the one you'll go with. Kind of one of those type deals. If this is a case that you are looking at, price for this case should be around $50, maybe a little bit less, or I mean, most people, this isn't a case you're going to see at your local Fry's, I don't think. As an Amazon.com, Newegg.com, or eBay case, I would expect price with shipping and everything on this unit to be around $50. I think I paid like, with shipping and handling and everything, I think I paid like $48 a piece for these suckers. Oh, forgot to mention, doing a... I got a decent deal on a really nice 4 gigabyte 4 gigabyte GTX 760 video card. I've already played around with the card a bit on 2 separate builds, and it's actually a really nice little card. I'm very impressed with the performance out of it. And it's not like the typical chintzy 4 gig versions of the 750 Ti and the 760. It's an actual solid card that's clearly intended as a high-end part. Very solid card. I'm very impressed with it. I tested it on Apex Legends with this set of components already, and I was hitting, I think, at absolutely maxed out settings. All settings completely at their max. 1080p resolution. I think I was hitting between, I think, 45 to 60. Sometimes going above 60. I don't think I ever went below 45. Definitely worth mentioning. I don't generally recommend buying new cases. It's really one of those items that a new part is just as good of as a used one in situation with cases. The only reason I ever buy new ones, and the reason I have these ones, is because sometimes if there's a glut in cases on the local market, which there was over the last couple of weeks, I will turn to the new market and buy ultra low-end news like this. I guess this is a little bit nicer than an ultra low-end, but typically I recommend, because of, again, the fact that very, very rarely are you getting anything out of a new case that you don't get out of a used case. I mean, unless you buy an absolutely trashed case, which most of the ones I get have noticeable wear and tear, but it's not anything crazy. It's not, it's usually small nicks, you know, maybe some fairly heavy scuffing, stuff like that, scratching in the case paint, but it's not, they're not usually dented or broken. They'll have cosmetic imperfections typically to the paint. This is a 750 watt Ultra branded power supply. My experience with Ultra over the years has been, they're not really anything to call home about, but they're not really anything to complain about either. Based on the weight of the unit, I'm going to say it's probably decent quality. But it's not a brand that I would say, you know, run out and buy if given, you know, given the alternatives of, say, I don't know, a Corsair or something like that. But again, it's not a bad power supply either. I haven't had any any reason to believe that they have premature failure issues or anything like that. The fact of the matter with power supplies is that, I mean, there's always exceptions, but as a general rule, anything over 550, 600 watts, there's not a lot of bad units out there anymore. Most of the parts on the market have gotten to the point where you just don't see the extremely, extremely low quality that we did in the past on some of these parts. So you'll see most of what I'm doing here is centered around hiding wiring and cables. I'm a huge stickler for hiding cables. I do not like visible wires if they can be avoided. Especially with a build like this. This is a build that's really, when you do a glass-cased system, it's really intended for looks. So you really want to try to keep the visuals, the visible cables to a minimum. So the way this case is designed, the back panel cover has, if you can see this little piece right here, I've got basically that much height that these cables can stick up, because it does have a bulge on the back side of the panel, which is definitely a nice for a shallower depth case. It's definitely a nice feature to have. The way that they did the SSD install bays is a little bit odd on this. It's functional, it works, but it's a little bit hinky. Maybe I'm doing it in the wrong direction. Just trying to do it so I could hide the cabling. Leave that one off. I like to put zip ties on cables like I'm about to do here, just for good housekeeping. It's not necessary, but it's definitely a nice added touch just for aesthetic reasons. Make sure your cables aren't going everywhere. I think everyone that builds systems has a little bit different of a way of doing these particular tasks on the build. This is the way I like to do it. Some people like to do it a little bit different, but this is the way I do it. So with this case, with the Diamond F1, I like to tuck extra cabling down in the little space between this little piece right here and the power supply. Usually there is enough space for them. This power supply has quite a bit of cabling, so I might have to get a little more creative, but usually there's space. So how you do this is different by each system, kind of predilected by the requirements. This one we're going to do, so I'm running the motherboard 8-pin in the space next to the RAM, and then up into the plug for that. There we go. So the Diamond F1, to pull the front panel off, if for whatever reason you need to, it's set up, it's just held in by tension by a couple of clips. Usually the proper way to release them, that I've found anyway with this case, is you work your way up, and then you do this. And I would actually recommend twisting the screwdriver, just like that, and you'll hear it click and release. And then you do the same thing on the other side. Okay. So in this case, I'm pulling out the USB 3 front mount port. The reason for that is because this particular board has USB 3, but it doesn't have the standardized front panel connector, so I'm going to pull that out just for kind of a good housekeeping thing again. The USB 3 is a fairly large cable. That's one less thing I have to worry about on there. And then I also don't like the way it runs the cabling through right here. Sometimes I like to mount a fan there. In fact, on this build, I will probably mount a fan there. So I'm going to run them up here through the top. I don't know why they wouldn't do that to begin with. It's just a stupid way they did that. Actually, let's do a little bit of quick zip tie magic here. That's interesting. And it's worth saying, this is all image stuff. I want buyers who buy my machines to feel like they're buying a premium unit. It is still pre-owned parts, but I am shooting for a more premium build quality. So in this case, with this case, you want to avoid going right up inside there, as convenient as it would be to stick the cables in there. The way that this case closes, it's got a lip that goes underneath there. So probably move the cabling over here. Actually, do this. Run them under here, actually, under the main power cable. Obviously, each one of these will be predilected by the specific set of components. You kind of start with a set of parts and then let them take you on whatever journey they want to go on with this build. Yay! No legacy AC97 connector! That's nice. I always cut those off. Those that do a lot of these builds will know what I'm talking about. They usually have a plug on here for the old style audio connector as well that kind of Y's off of here. I've always been annoyed at that. I guess I probably should have checked the board on this one. I'm assuming it's in the bottom corner. Most boards, probably 80% or more, the front panel audio connector is always in. Yes, it is. Isn't that special? Always in that corner right there. Tempted to maybe. Nah, I don't want to have to unscrew all that. I was kind of tempted to run it through right here so it was closer with less cabling, but I'd have to remove the power supply to do it. I don't really feel like doing that. This is a little tighter than I normally used to here. Let's see here. Okay. So the way the Diamond F1 does the hard drive for regular 3.5 size drives is a little odd. It uses these little rubber pieces with a screw inside of them, and then one of those goes inside each of the top two hard drive screws. Oops. And then it just kind of goes into the thing like that. It's kind of an odd way to do it, but I guess whatever floats their boat. So then the rest of these can kind of hide down inside there for now. In theory, this much cable management probably makes it more difficult to work on these, but I haven't gotten a complaint from a buyer yet, so I'm assuming people prefer the attention to detail. Okay, so the last thing with this, so you can kind of see what we've got taking shape here. Like I said before, the Diamond F1 uses a case with a bulge on it, so it's a little easier to hide cables. Getting right here. That might be bulging more than I want, though. So I might have to clip that one. Let's see if that does the trick. And I think that did it. Okay. So then the last step with this, which I'm not really going to show on camera, is thermal monitoring. Especially on a small, tight case like this that doesn't have a lot of space. I'm going to want to have thermal management or thermal monitoring software running. Probably for a good hour of gaming. Typically what I'm going to do is I'm going to go online and I'm going to look and I'm going to see what the acceptable temps are for this system and go from there. As long as it's within those temperatures, typically I leave it. I don't play that overkill game with cooling that some people do. Either it's sufficient or it isn't. If the numbers are saying it's not, I will add fans, I'll tweak things, I'll change heat sinks, things like that. But if the numbers are sitting where the manufacturer and user feedback is saying that the numbers should be at, I typically won't go mad trying to get it lower than that. So, the last thing here, this does have... It is sided too. You got to do the right side. So the top is taller than the bottom. Typically, I don't like leaving the plastic on. I know that could give buyers kind of a it's new feeling, but I don't know. I guess I like being able to photograph the systems. So put this on. Pull this off. I put those screws. Oh, there they are. It has these screws with rubber grommets, is that the word? It's got rubber on the end of them that protects the glass when you screw them on. You do want to be careful with the glass panel. I have heard that they are surprisingly fragile. Okay, so let's see if we still have a working computer. It is always possible to damage things in the assembly process. It doesn't happen often with me, but I have done it a few times. This set of components is fully tested, so if I plug it in and it doesn't work, that will mean a new problem that didn't exist when I initially tested. assuming I did it right, it's just going to plug in, come on, use my pre-existing Windows install, and be good to go. Okay. So when you plug a power supply in, I always tell this to customers, when you plug it in, always have the power supply switched off. You might even hear it when I plug it in. That noise, you want that's the power going into it. Basically, I'm sure there's a more scientific explanation, but plug it in and then switch it on. So, let's see what we got here. Should just power on and be good. See how this runs. If I get anything on the screen at all, it's pretty much good to go. Oh, look at that. First try. I'm going to switch my light off here a little bit so you can kind of see what this looks like. Guess it's possible my boot order. No, oh, nope, we're good. So this is what this case looks like. Let me see if I can get a... There we go. I'll get a little more focus there. Kind of hard to see, but anyway. Here, let's try this. Let's get a little bit of light, but not quite the overwhelming light here. Okay, let's do this. Okay, that kind of gives you an idea. It's got blue LEDs on the front, and then this one ring on the fan. Anyway, I hope everybody finds this video interesting and informative, and thanks for watching.